Hello and welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. So in this revision series, we are going through the current affairs of 2024. Okay? We have so far covered May month and June month to a large extent. So we'll cover today June remaining portion and July. Okay? So beginning with the first topic for today, that is KAZA and TFA states. KAZA, TFCA states, they have pushed again, matlab they have been talking about it that they want to withdraw from sites. Okay? So they have renewed this call that they will be withdrawing from sites. So first of all, let us understand what is KAZA TFCA states. Okay? KAZA TFCA stands for Kavango-Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area. Okay? So this basically consists of 5 countries, regions from 5 countries in southern part of Africa. In southern part of Africa, it consists of Angola, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe and Zambia. So these 5 countries के कुछ region मिला करके we create KAZA and TFCA states. ठीक है? Now they have been seeking withdrawal from sites. Why have they demanding withdrawal from sites? Is because of repeated denial of permission. कि they have some amount of ivory with them which they want to sell it in the international market and they are not getting permission. So they want to withdraw. They are not getting permission from sites. So they want to withdraw from sites. Okay? And not only ivory, other wildlife products also. They have certain products which they are saying that they have obtained it by after the death of the organism. After the death of the animal, they have obtained those products and they are not being permitted to sell it off. Now, there is obviously involvement of some amount of politics here, because the people from KAZA TFCA states, they are saying that they do not have sufficient amount of money to conserve this protected area. It's a very, very important protected area. Okay? But they do not have sufficient amount of money to protect this, and thus they want to generate some amount of revenue by selling of the ivory and other animal products, and whatever be the revenue generated out of this can be used for the protection of this area. Okay? So talking about this conservation land, 70% of this land is under conservation. Okay? And almost 2/3 of African elephants reside in this area. So African elephants का सबसे ज़्यादा concentration is in KAZA TFCA states, and they are selling off ivory. ठीक है? So talking about ivory trade and human wildlife conflicts, they are stating that the animals have died in man-animal conflict, so we have obtained some animal products from them, or because of their excessive population they are creating problems, so they have been killed and their animal products are being sold. ठीक है? These nations have advocated ivory trade to finance conservation. ये इनका पहला reason है कि इनके पास sufficient amount of money नहीं है for the conservation of this area, and because CITES is not giving them sufficient funds, so they want to finance the conservation. And the second reason is to reduce the man-animal conflict. These animals have already died and that is what they are trying to sell. ठीक है? Now, CITES restriction and KAZA nations की अगर बात की जाए तो KAZA nations are stating कि as we discussed कि इनके पास एक financial constraint है, और ये जो CITES का restriction लग गया है इसकी वजह से overall the economic potential that could have been generated from the trade of ivory products, ये पूरा economic potential का benefit ये group of countries उठा नहीं पा रहे हैं. They are not able to see the benefits by selling off these products. ठीक है? Because of the CITES economic restriction. इसलिए ये लोग बोल रहे हैं, that's why they are planning that we will exit this grouping itself. ठीक है? Secondly, एक इनके साथ ये भी कहना है कि because of the CITES restrictions, whatever animal products they have generated that they want to sell off in the western market. पहले western world में इसका बहुत demand हुआ करता था. But now we call this as trophy hunting restrictions. Trophy hunting restrictions मतलब animals are being killed and their animal parts are kept as a trophy that this animal was hunted by me. ठीक है? So trophy hunting restrictions लग गए हैं अब western countries में. Western countries do not promote trophy hunting. So now they are looking for more and more eastern countries. Eastern countries में they will be able to seek some kind of market to sell off their produce. ठीक है? So that was with respect to CITES and KAZA countries. Now coming to the practice question. The question for today is, which of the following statements are correct with respect to KAZA TFCA states? First, it is the world's largest land-based transboundary conservation area. Transboundary conservation area matlab it is not limited to one country, it is extending beyond one country. ठीक है? Secondly, it consists of 5 nations, namely Angola, Botswana, Namibia, Zambia and Zimbabwe. Third, it is also home to Okavango Delta and a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is the Victoria Waterfall. Both of them are lying within this KAZA TFCA states. ठीक है? We'll discuss the answer to this question, but at the end of the video. So let us proceed to another question, which is with respect to sites. Now we have been talking about that they are looking for withdrawal from sites. So sites is basically an organization that is trying to restrict illegal trafficking of endangered species. So the full form of sites itself says that this is a convention on illegal trafficking. So convention to ban, to restrict illegal trafficking of endangered species. That is the intention of sites. Okay? Now here the question says, it is an internationally legally binding agreement, but its rules do not precede the national laws. What the first statement is basically trying to ask is कि ये legally binding है, ठीक है? So once the rule has been created by sites, the countries are bound to follow this. But once it is created, it does not override the national laws. National laws will always be superseded. ठीक है? National laws will always be at the top. The sites, the laws that has been created by sites have to be adjudicated, have to be fulfilled, executed within the national boundary itself. ठीक है? Within the boundaries of the national law itself. The second statement says, India has been removed from the CITES review of significant trade. Review of significant trade, that is RST status for red sanders. You have to tell me whether the statement is true or false. ठीक है? Moving on to the next topic, this is recycling nutrients to mitigate fertilizer crisis. Now, before we enter about this discussion, start our discussion with respect to this topic, I'll give you a background of something that happened in 2019. 2019 May, there was another major pre-COVID, there was another major crisis of phosphorus world over. Russia accounts for close to 70% of the phosphorus reserves, and it tried to restrict, to manipulate the production of phosphorus. That led to phosphorus crisis all over the world. Now, phosphorus is one such product that can be used, that is used as a major fertilizer, but not only as a fertilizer, it is also used heavily as a battery. Okay? For electric vehicles, phosphorus is heavily used. So for all those countries who were dependent on phosphorus from China for either fertilizer or development of electric vehicle, they have suffered. Okay? 2019 May, close to 600% increase we saw in the prices of phosphorus. That was the time when we first started thinking about recycling the nutrients from agricultural runoff, from allied sector runoff. For example, for fertilizer we add to the soil, but not every fertilizer is utilized by the soil. A large part of the fertilizer is drained away from soil. So that enters into the canals, into the seepage, enters into the sewage and other areas. So all of that now enters into the nearby canals, to the seepage areas. So that time, 2019, when we were facing the crisis, we thought that let us try to recover phosphorus from these areas, because 600% increase in phosphorus prices is something that we cannot afford. Okay? So that is the background to this. Now, because we have already thought about this, all of this, so let us now analyze ki current capacity mein what is our status. How far have we been able to utilize the current fertilizer that we add to the soil? इससे whatever surface runoff, agricultural surface runoff से whatever nutrient enters into canals या river systems, इसमें से कितना हम लोग recover कर पाते हैं? What is how much we are able to currently recover? What is the potential? ठीक है? So talking about this, nutrients other than carbon have breached the boundaries of sustainability. We call this as biogeochemical cycle. Biogeochemical cycle, because these are certain chemical elements who are moving inside the inside the biology. So from biotic to abiotic factors, and from atmosphere to hydrosphere to lithosphere, these elements are continuously moving. So what are we doing here? Under this, because of excessive utilization of certain nutrients, especially we are talking about nitrogen and phosphorus as a fertilizer, what we have observed ki their presence in other areas. It was supposed to be present in rocks, but it is now present in water bodies. If it was there in rocks, we could have converted it into fertilizer and added it to the plants. It should have been either present in plants or in rocks, but in large quantities they are getting drained away. Okay? So this is a graph which is representing in 1985-86 when we started seeing the effect of green revolution. Since that time, the fertilizer consumption, blue color line shows about fertilizer consumption. So the fertilizer consumption has significantly increased. But if we talk about the food production to fertilizer consumption ka ratio, how much we have been able to increase the food production because of increased utilization of fertilizer, this has decreased. This red line shows a ratio of food grain increase in production divided by increase in fertilizer consumption. So fertilizer consumption overall has increased, but हमारा food grain production अगर देखा जाए तो this has declined. ठीक है? इसका मतलब the every unit of fertilizer that we are adding to the soil is not helping us to increase the food grain production. ठीक है? There is some mistake, there is some gap which we are not able to focus on. ठीक है? ये प्रॉब्लम क्या हो जाता है? दिस वी कॉल इज एज डबल डिसएडवांटेज. डबल डिसएडवांटेज, what is it? कि because the livestock farming has shifted away from agricultural land, away from rural areas to peri-urban or semi-urban areas, तो अभी इन सभी areas में whatever be the livestock output, feed, whatever be the livestock output, for example in the form of organic manure, in the form of cow urine, ठीक है, this is responsible for polluting that entire area. But if they were there in the rural areas, all of this could have been used as an organic fertilizer. ठीक है? So the first disadvantage is manure and urine is responsible for contamination of urban areas. Secondly, less availability of organic manure in rural areas. So we call this as the double disadvantage. ठीक है? Now, talking about the nutrient recycling, the problem, how wide is this problem? Let's talk about that, and then we will be moving on towards solution. Okay? This graph basically shows what is the increase in PM 2.5 levels in the Indo-Gangetic Plain. Okay? PM 2.5 levels in 1998 was very lightly spread across the Indo-Gangetic Plain. But by the time we have reached into 2020, it has reached to alarmingly high levels. Okay? PM 2.5 के लिए भी one of the biggest contributor is the fertilizer sector, that is nitrous oxide. ठीक है? This also is responsible for PM 2.5 additions. Nitrous oxide itself is an ozone depleting gas and has a very high global warming potential. We have discussed this in previous video that its global warming potential is 300 times that of unit molecule of carbon dioxide. ठीक है? और इन दोनों इसका पॉपुलेशन बढ़ जाता है बिकॉज ऑफ एक्सेसिव यूटिलाइजेशन ऑफ फर्टिलाइजर्स. If we talk about the fertilizer that is absorbed by the plants, it is less than 30%. Less than 30% of the nutrients that are supplied as a fertilizer is actually converted into food. More than 70% is drained away from the agricultural land. ठीक है? So इससे क्या क्या consequences होते हैं? Obviously, if there is huge amount of fertilizer which is entering into water bodies, it will lead to algal growth. It leads to pollution that is caused by nitrogenous compounds. As we discussed, this is nitrous oxide. ठीक है? Very high PM 2.5 levels. PM 2.5 levels is very high not only in air, but nitrous oxide and nitrogen compounds का aquatic pollution or urea based contamination, ammonia based contamination in Yamuna has also been reported to be very, very high. ठीक है? This results into this excessive amount of nutrients will lead to eutrophication, and eutrophication will call for growth of algal species. It leads to eutrophication, and eutrophication leads to growth of algal species. ठीक है? So it leads to occurrence of red tides, and India has highest number of most polluted cities. It has highest number of most polluted cities in the world. ठीक है? So this was the data we were discussing ki nutrient cycles, why is it a problem. Now talking about nutrient cycle itself as a solution also, as we discussed earlier, ki these are the correct nutrients just at an incorrect place. These are the useful nutrients at wrong place. So we just need to recycle from those wrong places and bring it back to use. Okay? What are those areas? Most importantly, it is recycling of manure. It is also recycling of urine, cattle urine, and lastly is the wastewater treatment. Okay? If we talk about recycling of manure, you see the amount of demand cut in fertilizer that will take place if we start utilizing the organic manure. We'll see this by numbers. Approximately 15 kg of manure is generated per cattle per day by 200 million cattle in India. ठीक है? अगर इसको हम लोग रिसाइकिल कर पाते हैं, if this much amount of manure is recycled, तो see the total amount of reduction in demand of fertilizer. 5% of NPK nutrient. इस recycling का अगर हम लोग 5% भी recycle कर पाए, if we recycle just 5% of this, so then this will generate a total fertilizer production of 1,50,000 metric tons of fertilizer can be obtained. 1,50,000 metric tons of fertilizer can be obtained. India's current demand per day is that of 1,37,000 metric tons. ठीक है? So this will surpass India's own. अगर हम लोग अपने organic manure को fertilizer में convert कर पाए, so our own demand of fertilizer we will be able to fulfill. Not only that, we will be also able to export. ठीक है? So this would be a very useful utilization of the organic manure. Secondly, nutrients can also be obtained. Nitrogen and phosphorus specifically we are talking about. They can also be obtained by wastewater treatment. As we discussed, कि large part of this is entering into water bodies. तो अभी हम लोगों को निकालना कहाँ से पड़ेगा? Water bodies से. If we try to treat the wastewater, ठीक है? See, 40% of India's daily fertilizer consumption. 40% of India's daily fertilizer consumption is lost from the wastewater treatment capacity. इसका मतलब हमारा wastewater treatment को अगर से हम लोग recover कर पाए, तो हमारे fertilizer का 40%, close to 50% we will be able to obtain. Only from wastewater we will be able to obtain. But अगर हम लोग अपने wastewater के treatment की capacity को देखें, तो that is merely 27%. ठीक है? So इसलिए हम लोग अपने wastewater treatment capacity को fully utilize नहीं कर पा रहे हैं. Our existing infrastructure is not sufficient to cater to the treatment of huge amount of wastewater that is being generated. There are whatever be the STPs that are working in India, they are working at full capacity. और हम लोग अपने capacity को बढ़ाएं, अगर ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा STP establish हो पाएंगे, तो this 27% मतलब ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा wastewater को recycle कर पाएंगे. If we are able to recycle our wastewater, 40% of India's fertilizer sector demand can be treated from the wastewater itself. ठीक है? So that was with respect to utilization. अगर ये utilize कर पाए तो इसके लिए initiatives क्या क्या है? We have one goal 7 of KMGBF. Goal 7 of Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. ठीक है? What is this KMGBF? This is actually utilization. ये हम लोगों ने एक UNCBD की मीटिंग हुई थी. UNCBD met at Kunming. Kunming is a place in China, but उस समय कोविड हो गया चाइना में, so the entire meeting got shifted to Canada in Montreal. So this is known as Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. This was one of the meetings of UNCBD, UN Convention on Biodiversity, which was talking about reducing the usage of chemical fertilizer and basically reducing the usage of harmful chemicals and pesticide which will harm the biodiversity. ठीक है? तो वो गोल 7 को अगर हम लोग अपने न्यूट्रिएंट रिसाइकलिंग पे फोकस कर पाए तो गोल 7 भी इंप्लीमेंट कर पाएंगे. We will be able to implement our goal 7 of KMGBF. You know what they have done is they have initiated a procedure कि they are trying to recover nitrogen from manure. ठीक है? इंडिया में अगर बात की जाए तो दिल्ली में स्पेसिफिक टू दिल्ली, बिकॉज नॉट एवरी एसटीपी, नॉट एवरी सीवेज ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट और वेस्ट वाटर ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट is recovering the manures, is recovering the nutrients. There is one plant in Delhi which is responsible for this, that is phosphate recovery इनका 35 to 74% हो पा रहा है, and nitrogen recovery they are able to carry out 14 to 93%. ठीक है? So moving on to our practice question, which of the following statements with respect to nutrient recycling in India is or are correct? Sorry. The first statement says India's wastewater treatment capacity is 27%, which is higher than the global average of 20%. ठीक है? The second statement says since 1980s, India's food production to fertilizer consumption has declined. Fertilizer consumption ratio has declined. ठीक है? So we'll discuss the answer to this question. Moving on to the next topic, which is the People's Biodiversity Register. ठीक है? This is a very important news. Kerala में there is one Gram Panchayat that has initiated its own People's Biodiversity Register. Now we will understand what is People's Biodiversity Register, but please understand that this is not the only PBR which has been generated in India. There are so many states and so many districts within these states who have initiated a People's Biodiversity Register. Okay? So we call this one of the first initiatives within Kerala, because Kerala already was having a People's Biodiversity Register. Within Alappuzha as a district, the first Gram Panchayat was this one who has initiated its own People's Biodiversity Register. ठीक है? So what is People's Biodiversity Register? ये actually decentralization है. Decentralization मतलब अब तक बायोडाइवर्सिटी का रजिस्ट्रेशन एक सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट की अथॉरिटी करती थी. They will come and check, अच्छा this plant, this animal, this fruit, this tree, these are all present in your areas. But this will be generated, a PBR is generated by people. So community will come and report, we have this plant, this animal, this fruit, this and all of this related to biodiversity, we have such and such reportings. ठीक है? So this is a comprehensive record of biodiversity, or what conservation effort that community has put for the protection of this biodiversity is also mentioned under PBR itself. ठीक है? BMC stands for Biodiversity Management Committee. We'll understand the background of this also, but you should understand that BMC along with the local communities is responsible for the creation of this. ठीक है? अब आते हैं what is BMC? तो हमारे यहाँ एक एक्ट पास हुई थी which was the Biodiversity Act. Biodiversity Act. ठीक है? This Biodiversity Act created a 3-tier structure at central level, state level and at district level. ठीक है? At the central government level, this was known as National Biodiversity Authority, State Biodiversity at the state level, and at district level, Biodiversity Management Committee or BMCs were created. ठीक है? अब ये BMC का काम, now you understood कि because they are sitting at the district level, so this BMC is kept with this task, they are designated with this task कि community के level पर PBR का generate करना आपकी responsibility होगी. ठीक है? It shall be the responsibility of a biodiversity management committee at the district level to create a People's Biodiversity Register. ठीक है? Now, ये signify क्या करता है People's Biodiversity Register? As we discussed, एक तो उस region का biodiversity, second कि वहाँ की community what kind of conservation efforts that community has put up for the protection of the species found in that area. ठीक है? So conservation of biodiversity plus access and benefit sharing. What is access and benefit sharing? Basically कि कभी भी किसी तरीके के plant produce या biodiversity के produce का अगर आपको genetic utilization है, if you have the genetic resource of this biodiversity and you are creating medicines out of this genetic resource, so you should be thankful, you should be acknowledging this to the traditional community who told you about this. A simple example to this is the Vicks ginger and honey. ठीक है? Vicks ginger and honey कि Vicks को somebody might have informed Vicks that if you add ginger to honey, it has some therapeutic effect on cold and cough, and it will clear your voice. ठीक है? So Vicks should actually acknowledge this fact and be thankful to that traditional community and share the benefit. Access, अगर आपको access मिलता है, तो you should be sharing the benefit with that traditional community. ठीक है? Now talking about implementation of regulation, whatever be the regulation, एक तो we spoke about it कि this is binded under Biodiversity Act that BMC must create a People's Biodiversity Register. तो एक तो अगर हम लोग ये PBR बना रहे हैं, तो we are following the laws, ठीक है? And next important significance is it is also helping in implementation of life and decentralized approach. What is life? Life stands for lifestyle for environment. लाइफस्टाइल फॉर एनवायरमेंट सेज कि आपका लाइफस्टाइल में कुछ चेंजेस आना चाहिए विच शुड बी प्रो एनवायरमेंट इन नेचर, ठीक है. सो मिशन लाइफ विच वाज एन गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडियाज इनिशिएटिव कि हमें अपने लाइफस्टाइल में कुछ ऐसे चेंजेस लाना चाहिए विच शुड बी प्रो एनवायरमेंट इन नेचर, दैट इज मिशन लाइफ. उसे भी इंप्लीमेंट करने के लिए पीबीआर इज यूजफुल एंड इट इज ऑल्सो वेरी डिसेंट्रलाइज्ड फॉर्म ऑफ एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, ठीक है. टॉकिंग अबाउट इंडियाज बायोडाइवर्सिटी, हमारे पास ग्लोबल लैंड मास की बात की जाए तो इट इज नियरली 2.4%, 2.4% ऑफ द ग्लोबल लैंड. बट अगर बायोडाइवर्सिटी की बात की जाए तो वी हैव इंडिया हैज 7% ऑफ द ग्लोबल बायोडाइवर्सिटी, 7% of the global biodiversity. We have currently 4 out of world's 36 biodiversity hotspots. Where are the biodiversity hotspots of India? We do have it in Western Ghats, we have it in Himalayas region, we have it in Northeast and in Andaman and Nicobar region. So we do have 4 out of the world's 36 biodiversity hotspots. और ऐसे कंडीशन में it is very important for India to have its own people's biodiversity register at the district level, ठीक है. Now moving on to the next practice question, which of the following statements is or are correct with respect to Biodiversity Act? The first statement says several states such as Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Karnataka, etc. have created PBR at district levels. The second statement is BMC or Biodiversity Management Committee at the district level are entrusted with creation and publication of People's Biodiversity Register. ठीक है? Again, we'll be discussing the answer to this question. Moving on to the next topic, which is talking about Gharials in Kaziranga National Park. ठीक है? Now, Gharials actually look like this. They have a long, thin snout. ठीक है? But between males and female, you can see there is a difference between this bulbous snout, which is present at the top of the mouth. This is larger for males, this is smaller for females, but otherwise males are also larger, female gharial are relatively smaller in size. ठीक है? Gharials are actually critically endangered species. ठीक है? Or very recently we have found one female gharial in Kaziranga Wildlife Sanctuary as well as National Park, and that has brought us this hope that we can revive back gharials in Kaziranga National Park or Wildlife Sanctuary. ठीक है? If we talk about India's crocodile, so we have 3 kinds of crocodiles. All 3 are present in Appendix 1 of CITES and Schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act. What is Appendix 1 of CITES? That means these species are very few in number and the countries should stop the illegal trade so as to increase their overall number. ठीक है? So they are listed in Appendix 1 of CITES and Schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act. Schedule 1 में किसी animal को रखते हैं. If you keep an animal in Schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act, you give it maximum amount of security, protection. ठीक है? So there are 3 crocodilian species from India, which is part of both of them. From India, these are part of both of them. One, Gharial, which is critically endangered. Magar, the common crocodile that we see, which is vulnerable. And the saltwater crocodile, these are least concern. Out of these 3, they are the biggest one and they are the smallest one. Gharials are smallest in size and saltwater crocodile are largest in size. ठीक है? Talking about Gharials, these are Asian crocodiles, long and thin snouts. ठीक है? Their habitat is a freshwater river tributaries of Ganga river. So Gharials will be usually found in fresh water. Crocodiles are found in fresh water, but saltwater crocodile will be found usually in salt water. ठीक है? They are also indicators of clean river. If the river turns out to be polluted, so they will move out from that place. ठीक है? So they will become habitat destruction की वजह से their numbers can reduce or they can change their habitat. ठीक है? Talking about the Kaziranga National Park, this national park is in Assam. ठीक है? And it is one of the UNESCO's World Heritage Site. Kaziranga National Park is India's UNESCO World Heritage Site. ठीक है? One very important thing about Kaziranga National Park, of course it is along the Brahmaputra river and Majuli, close to Majuli Island, and all of that is important. But one very important fact with respect to Kaziranga National Park is India ka 66% of, world 66% of one-horned rhinos are in Kaziranga National Park. ठीक है? Because of its increased tiger population in 2006, this was given the position of a tiger reserve also. ठीक है? If we talk about the fauna that is found here in terms of animal species, we have of course the tigers, elephants, wild water buffaloes, swamp deer, and in terms of floral species, we have grassland, savanna, dry deciduous and semi-evergreen. We do not have completely evergreen trees in these areas. Okay? This is found along the banks of Brahmaputra river. Now moving on to our practice MCQs, which is with respect to Gharials. The first statement says they live in freshwater areas. Second, males are larger than female and have a bulbous snout at the top. Okay? Thirdly, they are hunted for skin and to create traditional medicines. Okay? Now moving on to the next topic, which is with respect to UNESCO's emphasis on improving soil quality. Okay? Emphasis on soil protection. So UNESCO in its last meeting has requested the member nations that please take some measures for conservation of the soil. Okay? Because UNESCO has stated some very alarming numbers. The current degradation status, if we talk about, 75% of the soil world over is already degraded, and by 2050, 90% of world soil will become degraded. And that will lead to immense crisis of food security, but apart from that, it will also be affecting climate change as well as the biodiversity. Okay? So these two numbers are very, very alarming. So what has UNESCO done? Two important projects. One is a pilot project in its biosphere reserves. Whatever be the UNESCO's MABs, that is Man and Biosphere Reserves, in these areas, it has designated that this will be a soil conservation center. So soil conservation centers, what they are doing? Within a biosphere reserve, they are trying to protect, preserve the soil and replenish the soil within that biosphere reserve completely. Okay? The second important project of UNESCO is Soil Health Index. Soil Health Index is somewhat similar to Soil Health Card. You basically have to give your soil sample and they will tell you the status of soil. Okay? So Soil Health Index is giving you the is dividing the world's soil into good category, healthy category, improved category, dangerous categories. ये सारी categories में उसे divide करेगी. This is another important project of UNESCO. Okay? If we talk about the soil degradation, the global initiatives, some of them are very, very important that you should know. One is a bond challenge. Bond challenge क्या कह रही है कि we will carry out afforestation. Afforestation of 150 million hectares of land. 150 million hectares of land by 2020 was the target. This target as of now we have missed. The next target is 350 million hectares by 2030. By the end of this decade, 350 million hectares of land has to be afforested. ठीक है? ये हुआ bond challenge. This is an initiative of IUCN. There is one more initiative of FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, which is known as Global Soil Partnership. Global Soil Partnership क्या करेगी कि this will look into the soil quality of different areas और वहाँ की government को जाकर request करेगी that you need to prioritize soil in the global agenda. When you are creating your developmental policies, you also need to prioritize soil. That is Global Soil Partnership Initiative of FAO. ठीक है? The next initiative is that of land degradation neutrality. We need to stop, reverse the trend of land degradation by 2030. Okay? Another initiative of FAO itself is decarbonization of decarbonization of agricultural soil. So basically, FAO is taking an initiative wherein we are trying to bind more and more amount of carbon in soil, in agricultural soil. That is the initiative of FAO. Okay? Then we have of course the KMGBF, Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, that is also focusing on biodiversity conservation, and to conserve the biodiversity you will also be focusing on soil you'll also be focusing on soil conservation. Okay? So this was another initiative. Now talking about the practice MCQ, which is with respect to soil degradation. The first statement says Brahmaputra Valley in India is identified as the country's biggest hotspot for soil erosion. Okay? Second, within the same statement, Odisha being the other catastrophic area. Okay? The second statement says 30% of soil in India is degraded. Moving on to the next topic, which is the final topic for today, that is law around low carbon and climate resilient development. So Supreme Court, why did this come into picture is because Supreme Court in a recent judgment, what was the judgment about? It was M.K. Ranjit Singh. MK Ranjit Singh and others versus Union of India, ठीक है, which was talking about right to be free from adverse impact of climate change. Now, Supreme Court in one of its judgment talks about right to live in a clean climatic condition, ठीक है. So that means it is emphasizing to the legislature and to the executive that you need to create a law or implement the laws in such a manner that a person should be able to live in a climate changing free environment, or his or her life should be resilient from the changing climatic conditions, ठीक है. So laws related to climate resilient development, ये इसके क्या characteristics होने चाहिए? This is just a draft which has been created on the basis of Supreme Court's judgment कि what should be the content of such a law which will be able to ensure the life. We know that Supreme Court has interpreted this under the Article 21 कि under right to life you also have this right to live in a life which is resilient to the changing climatic conditions, ठीक है. तो इस तरीके के लॉ के क्या कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स होने चाहिए? फर्स्ट is to mainstream in developmental policies. Second is aligned with federal structure. We should also keep in mind that there are so many things which are to be left with, which are the purview of state government itself. For example, agriculture for that matter, health for that matter is within the purview of the state government itself. So if you have to ensure that the life is resilient from climate change, तो आपको agriculture पे भी इतना invest करना पड़ेगा. You will have to invest so much in agriculture or shift towards organic farming. Government will have to focus on organic farming so that कि fertilizer usage कम हो पाए, overall nutrient depletion कम हो पाए, soil degradation कम हो पाए. All of this has to be carried out with federal structure to be kept in mind. ठीक है. Next, there should be a short-term, mid-term and long-term plan in accordance with LTLEDs, Paris goals and net zero goals. We know that we have kept ourselves a target of 2070 to become a net zero emitter. ठीक है. तो अगर हमें LTLEDs के टारगेट्स को या पेरिस क्लाइमेट डील के टारगेट को या फिर नेट जीरो गोल्स को अकम्प्लिश करना है, then we should have a short term, mid term and long term target which should be aligned to this net zero goals of 2070. ठीक है. And there should be definitely an institutional structure. ये क्या क्या करेगी institutional structure? क्या क्या regulations होने चाहिए? अगर आप regulations बनाए हो तो whether you are executing this or not, उसका monitoring करना भी उसका काम रहेगा. And if the parties, two conflicting parties are there, तो उसके बीच में dispute resolution, grievance redressal, all of this should be the task of that institutional structure. ठीक है. So with that we come to the end of this discussion. Now let us quickly go through the questions, practice questions. The first question for today was, KAZA and TFCA states it is the world's largest land-based transboundary conservation area. This is correct. Consists of 5 nations is also correct. Angola, Botswana, Namibia, Zambia and Zimbabwe. ठीक है. Apart from this, it is also home to Okavango Delta and Victorian waterfalls. Both of them are correct. Okavango Delta is a very important position. This is also a peatland and a huge amount of variety in biodiversity lives in this delta. ठीक है. Most of the images that you see from Africa showing biodiversity is the image of Okavango Delta itself. ठीक है. Now, talking about the second question, which was with respect to sites, it is an internationally legally binding agreement. Yes, but its rules do not precede national laws, as we discussed it in the video itself. And India has been removed from CITES review of significant trade for trade in red sanders. So RST status was allocated to India because they were saying that the red sanders that India exports is depleting the population of red sanders. ठीक है. This is majorly an illegal trade and smuggling का product है. But government of India in the last meeting of CITES had convinced CITES that the product that we are selling, which is considered to be made from red sanders, is actually industrially manufactured. This is not the raw material that produce that we are selling off. So please allow us to continue trading in red sanders ka products. Okay? So because of this explanation, India was removed from the status of review of significant trade. Okay? So the next question for today was with respect to nutrient recycling. Okay? First, India's wastewater treatment capacity is 27%. This we discussed in the video. Okay? and this is also higher than the global average of 20%. Global average of wastewater recycling is only 20% and India's value is relatively higher. ठीक है? Since 1980s, this we have seen in the video that food production to fertilizer consumption ratio has declined. ठीक है? हमारा fertilizer consumption बढ़ा है, but उसके respect में food production has not increased. ठीक है? Moving on to the next question, which was with respect to Biodiversity Act. Remember, Biodiversity Act created three-tier structure: National Biodiversity Authority, State Biodiversity Authority, and Biodiversity Management Committees. ठीक है? Several states such as Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Karnataka, etc. have created PBR at district levels. This is correct. We have discussed it in video. Remember, Kerala is not the first state to do so, but it was also one of the states to do so. ठीक है? Biodiversity Management Committee at the district level are entrusted with creation and publication of People's Biodiversity Register is also correct. ठीक है? Then we had the question on Gharials, which is the first statement, they live in freshwater areas, is correct. Males are larger than female and have a bulbous snout at the tip, and they are hunted for skin and to create traditional medicine is also correct. ठीक है? Majorly hunted for skin, but also to for the creation of traditional medicines. ठीक है? Moving on to the next question, which is with respect to soil degradation. The first statement here says Brahmaputra Valley is identified as the country's biggest, this is very, very important, country's biggest hotspot for soil erosion, this is correct, and Odisha being the other catastrophic area. What we have done basically is soil degradation mapping mein we have marked where are the catastrophical areas. Isme largest one is in Brahmaputra, the next one is in Odisha, and the second statement is also correct that 30% of soil in India is degraded. ठीक है? So that was with respect to today's current affairs discussion, which was the June's current affairs and June remaining portion and July's current affairs with respect to environment. Okay? With that, we come to the end of this video. If you have any doubt, please do let us know in the comment section below. Thank you so much and all the very best.